These days, indie games are in a tier of their own. I mean, when you think about it, every year people flock to services like Steam and ID at Xbox to try out new quirky games that don't quite fit the norm of AAA developers. Oftentimes these games are too much of a risk for AAA developers just because of the fact that who wants to put money behind an idea that's not backed up by a sequel or a prequel or a formula to making money, and oftentimes it's up to indie developers to bring us something new. So today I actually went back almost a decade to find a game that was crucial to the proliferation of indie games. The game that is possibly single-handedly responsible for so many of these awesome indie games that we've grown to know and love, which without, they would never have existed. Of course, today I am talking about an indie platformer by a developer known as Jonathon Blow, and that game is called Braid. Braid was created by an at the time relatively unknown programmer by the name of Jonathon Blow. As Blow tells it, he was inspired to create a game based on time travel mechanics during discussion with colleagues over the impact of time control in video games in general. His colleagues argued that if a player can rewind time, then nothing is ever that difficult or meaningful, as it can rob a game of its challenge or depth. In 2004, he created the first demo prototype of the game, which in its crude state earned him exceptional positive feedback and acclaim, despite him putting in $40,000 worth of debt and having already spent $200,000 during development. However, after 4 years of hard work and effort from webcomic artist David Hellman, and licensed music from artists Jamie Sieber, Cheryl Ann Fulton and Shira Kamen, the game was complete and became a huge success on its native platform, the Xbox 360, during its Summer of Arcade event. In fact, if any of you have seen Indie Game the Movie, Braid is featured there with Jonathon during some interviews. Okay, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to talk about all the development stuff, but there was a lot to cover. Anyway, let's get to the game itself. In this game we play as this guy called Tim. We don't really know much about him from the start, and if you're not interested in the passive storytelling of the game, you won't pick up on much. Essentially, he's trying to save his princess from a vile monster. Tim has made some sort of mistake if you read the first world's text, but it's vague as to what he's actually done. Oh, and the first world is called World 2. Okay, I'm sure that's supposed to be like that. Now, Tim himself has very few abilities. He can jump, move, and interact with objects like doors, and even keys to unlock more doors. However, his main gimmick is that he can rewind time at will. Miss a tricky jump? Don't worry, just rewind. Get hit by an enemy? No worries, just rewind. Tim can only take one hit, and he can be harmed by spikes, enemies, and the usual video game hazards, but for the most part, if you want to pacify an enemy, then you just need to jump on their heads. Though I don't know exactly what the deal is with these guys. They're pretty odd looking, but docile if you ignore the fact that just rubbing against them causes Tim to die. There are also some plants known as claws, which just sort of gently try to nip at you. Again, not much of a threat. Now the bunnies on the other hand. The basic idea of each level is that you need to walk to the right to get to the ending door. Most levels also have jigsaw pieces of paintings which you can collect after completing a puzzle. Collect all of them in a world and you can solve the painting puzzle outside in Tim's house, which pertains to the story of the game. Most of the puzzles don't preclude you from completing the levels, as Jonathon Blow's intention was that if players got too stuck, they should be able to keep progressing if things got too much. Plus, thanks to the useful level select hub, it's easy to not only spot which worlds still have jigsaw pieces to collect, but which need to be completed to advance the story. There are a total of 6 worlds to complete, and each one has a special time-based gimmick that you need to master in order to progress. The second world works much the same as a normal platforming game, as the only thing you need to understand is your control of the rewind ability and how it affects the environment. And when you finish the level you find a cute little dinosaur thing. Wait, what?
Your princess is in another castle.
Oh, I see what you did there, buddy. You didn't eat toad, did you? You're not a herbivore. Wait, hang on. Why are you here again? Why can you talk? World 3 uses green pads and sections which, when stood on, disable the effect of the passage of time. So if, for example, you pick up a glowing green key and use the rewind ability, it will stay in your hands. If you open a green door with a normal key, which might I add breaks upon use, you could open it, rewind to repair the key, yet keeps the original door open, and use the key again to open the next door. Right? Plus, this world also introduces you to the only boss in the game, simply known as the boss. He does make another appearance later on, but for the most part you just drop chandeliers on his head. World 4 makes a very mind-melting inclusion that when you move right, moves forward time, and when you move left, it rewinds it. So for example, during World 2 you have to hunt some enemies to get a jigsaw piece, and it's not tricky or anything, but then try doing it again in this world. If you don't attack the one at the top first, then when you make your way down to the other enemies, he starts coming back to life because of you reversing time to access the other platforms. Then there's World 5, where you have the ability to spawn a shadow clone of yourself, which tracks back to the last action you did. So you now have to work in tandem with your past actions in order to work together to solve puzzles. Don't worry though, World 6 is actually a lot more manageable. Essentially you can drop Tim's magical engagement ring, I think? Okay. To slow down time, the closer you or other objects are to the ring, the slower they get, which is useful for slowing down projectiles when climbing ladders. And then you go to World 1, and things get weird. To start off, we seem to gather over the course of the story that something's up. Tim's motivations are called into question, we start ignoring dinosaurs, it gets really weird. And now that we're back at World 1, we get to see how things started. The world's time flows in reverse, so everything we do runs parallel with our platforming sections, but it's super brief. That is until we see the princess. She jumps out of the arms of some sort of thuggish knight and starts getting chased by a wall of fire. Oh gods, why? And this section in particular really shows off how meticulously well timed the game's mechanics and puzzles are. As we progress, we need to pull levers to aid the princess above us so she can help us from dying from the flames by opening paths for us. Then after a long struggle, we finally get to her house. Then when we reach the house, we can't really do anything. So, just to see if it would work, I press the reverse button. And then she wakes up. Don't worry madam, you're safe, there's nowhere to... Wait a minute, is she running away from me? What? So it turns out, in actual fact, she was running away from us. And we were acting in reverse. As the game shows us the princess running into the arms of a well-to-do knight who was trying to stop us from getting to her. World 1 wasn't in reverse, everything was in reverse. Oh, I get it, Tim was the problem. Wow. Then we get another area full of books explaining Tim's motivations, and if you're super clever, there are also a few stars hidden around the game which are incredibly tricky to find, but also get to. Plus the story is somewhat ambiguous, but for the most part one theory is very prevalent. Okay, you ready for this? The princess is an atomic bomb. Wait, where are you going? Wait! I mean, look at the evidence. Tim starts the game in what looks like a burning city. Possibly Manhattan. The text is in bold, burning letters. If you ride the chandelier on the chase sequence with the princess, you bump into her. And this happens. And in the last area of the game there is even a quote taken directly from Kenneth Bainbridge, who remarked, "We're all sons of bitches," after the Trinity nuclear bomb test. And what was the name of this project called? The Manhattan Project. Riddled with guilt, he lost his senses and retreated to a fantasy land where he desperately tried to turn back time to stop his princess from being lost, ultimately failing, and in so doing, looping in a circle, forever unable to change his actions, to save his princess or to stop the buildings in his mind from burning. So there we have Braid, a game that was truly one of a kind and has set the benchmark for indie game development, and I think has deserved all the praise it's had over the last few years. There's a lot of deep meaning behind a lot of the story elements, but also the mechanics are just so well put together. It's airtight. It requires a lot of brain power to get through some of the puzzles, and honestly, just from a sheer mechanical level, everything just fits together so perfectly. The timings, the puzzles themselves, the way the time flow mechanic works is just pure genius. And I wouldn't always say it's fun to play, but there's definitely a lot of brain teasing and challenging sections which some people like me might find fun, but might put off some players who just kind of want to get through the game without getting all the collectibles. Now, I was very lucky in particular with this game because Xbox recently threw a big sale where I managed to pick it up for just over £1. And to be honest, you can get this game on both the Xbox 360, Xbox One and Steam, so I would highly recommend getting it. It's a really good game, it's definitely one of the best puzzle games I've ever played, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. And if you don't already have this game or have never played it, I suggest you hurry up, because, as we all know, we're all running out of time. These days, indie games are in a tier of their own. I mean, when you think about it,